In this video, we will look at the 3 tools that we use to shape our reality and our destiny. It's these 3 tools that we use when we evaluate what's true, what is truth for us, what we use to make decisions, and how we navigate our social sphere, aka our relationships. We're going to look at which of these 3 tools is actually guiding our lives, and which tool do we need if we want to expand, grow, to unlimit ourselves, and to live a fulfilled and happy life. Our reality is created based out of social, personal, and cultural accepted beliefs, rules, ideas, concepts, and assumptions. And it's these beliefs that either limit us or free us. It is these beliefs that we use to make decisions. We believe that they are facts, and these so-called facts are what we're using to live our life by. It's completely subjective and completely limiting our experience. These 3 tools that we use are judgments, discrimination, and discernment. We form beliefs when we marry our feelings with our thoughts, especially a strong feeling with a thought. And as we do that, then it goes in and updates that programming that I talk about. This programming is what drives our decision-making process. If we want deep transformational growth, we have to interrupt this process, or we have to see and be aware of what is guiding our actual decision-making process. Emotions are so key to shaping our reality. If we feel rich, we will be rich. If we feel joy, our brain is going to pattern recognize, it's going to look out into the world, try to find evidence for that. So you will find more things to bring you joy when you're already in a state of joy. The unfortunate part of that is if we are in a state of sadness or depression or I'm not worthy belief system, then our brain is going to pattern recognize it and show us evidence to prove that to ourselves. That is when we operate on automatic pilot. That's essentially what is happening. So we have 2 things in our hardware. We have our memory of all of our experiences, and then we have perception. So our brain is referencing the past in the present moment. It's in the present moment we're taking information in, and the brain is quickly going to the past experience and then to those 3 tools, maybe, if we're actually using the tools. If we're not using the tools, then we're just on automatic pilot, having the same experience over and over again. Here's some common beliefs that run in the background of our experience. There is never enough time. Life is hard. Struggle, striving, hustling to make it is the norm. Everybody's doing it. We all have to do that. I'm unlucky. They don't like me. I'm not fill in the blank. I'll never fill in the blank. I don't have enough. Fill in the blank. I'm too fill in the blank. I'm supposed to. And I can't fill in the blank. These are some of the scripts that we play and that we live by. These are the background driving forces to our experience. If we want to have a radically different experience, if we want to go from feeling limited, poor, fragmented, to whole, complete, abundance, easeful, we are going to have to interrupt these scripts by seeing the lies and the illusions that they're spinning. Carl Jung had a quote, and he says, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's essentially what we do. And it's essentially what we are going to stop doing in this program, or at least the goal of this program. In yogic philosophy, there's a great parable that describes this. It's the parable of the 3 blind men and the elephant. So these three blind men approach an elephant, and one grabs its tail and says an elephant is like a snake. The other one grabs its leg and it says, no, it's nothing like a snake at all. It is like a pillar. And then the other one grabs its ear and says, it's none of those at all. It is like a fan. So each one of these men were having an experience, a subjective experience of their reality. But they were having that subjective experience of the reality based on very limited information. If they had vision and they could step back, they could see the whole picture and then be able to discern what an elephant really is. And much like us too, we are very myopic with our programming, with our belief system, with our limited knowledge and limited culture, to then forming our basis of our reality and experience off of that. The more we get a broader, bigger picture, we're going to see more of the truth and more of reality. When we start to say no to our programming, saying no to these limiting beliefs, that stopping of that limiting belief through our awareness is what sets us up to have completely different experiences. It's what sets us up to be expansive, to grow, to be unlimited and free. See, these beliefs and scripts that we've been living our life by, that are based on assumptions, ideas, concepts, beliefs that we've accepted, they are what is clouding our true self, they're clouding truth, and they're clouding knowledge. See, many of us, we go to school to get information and to understand things and to understand facts or acquire more facts. But knowledge is very different than understanding. So knowledge goes beyond understanding. We don't get knowledge from the outside. We don't get knowledge from college. We get knowledge from within. And that's what creates wisdom. So we pit the experience that we're having or information off of discernment. Discernment involves our intuition and our higher reasoning mind to evaluate a deeper truth. And it's discernment that we are going to strive for and cultivate more in this course. It is one of the three tools. But most of us are using not discernment, we're using judgment and discrimination. So of the three tools, there is judgment, discrimination, and discernment. And we're going to look at each one of these and how they're different. And then you can kind of reflect on which one of these you tend to use the most in your daily life. So the first one is judgments. We're going to look at judgments first. Judgments are very popular. Judgments are at the level that most people operate their life. Judgments, all they are essentially is opinions. They're your personal preference, your likes, your dislikes, the things that you seem to feel are good or bad based on your accepted values and your accepted beliefs. Judgments happen quickly with little to no information sometimes. They are our knee-jerk reactions, and they have a critic part to them. So they are, as far as a judgment goes, if I was to give you an example, it'd be something like this: that person is mean. I don't like that dress. Things like that. They clearly state your opinion, your preference. Judgments are what the ego forms, and the ego loves to divide and separate. So judgment will always create a division and a separation. The second tool is discrimination. And when I speak of discrimination, I'm not talking about prejudice, unfair, or stereotypical behavior to another. That certainly is discrimination. But what I'm talking about is discrimination as an analyzing process. To discriminate between at least two things or more, you're analyzing to see the differences. So it's a differentiation tool. You're distinguishing the differences between something. You're basically make a pros and cons list. Or let's say you have a profession, cooks and wine connoisseurs use a lot of discrimination because they are pitting, they've refined their taste buds so much that they can distinguish the differences in flavors in something and then form an opinion whether that is higher or lower. So discrimination too, in that way, as an analyzing tool, is a tool that the ego uses to separate and divide, to say that this is better, that is worse, this is fact, that is false. So those two are largely used by the ego. The third tool is discernment, and discernment moves past the ego. In discernment, we're taking in information and we're pitting it against our intuition. You could also have discernment and pit it against a framework of principles you've set for yourself. Some people create these principles that they set for themselves from a religion that they believe in, or a Bible, a book of some sort that they believe in, or science that they've accepted, or based on personal past experiences. Now, those three could have some pitfalls to it. Our personal experience can be misinterpreted. We could be misperceiving the present moment. Science is ever changing when new input comes in. And Bibles and religions, well, the Bibles have been translated by man. So there is some subjectivity in that as well. But if you choose to do your frameworks from those, that's your choice. And that will be the baseline with which you will evaluate the world around you, pit it up against to see if it's true or false. So what you adopt is what you adopt. I'm just giving you the framework to understand why we believe certain things and why things in our environment fit with us or don't fit with us. Now, we want to move from judgments to discrimination to discernment, or go straight to discernment. We're not going to get rid of judgments entirely. Discrimination is needed when we want to evaluate something. If you were going to buy a car, you're going to do the pros and cons on this car versus that car. We're wanting to keep our analyzing logical mind, but we want to also be able to have intuition and discernment and pit everything against that. So most only operate the world on judgments with a little bit of discernment. So that is more instinct and intellect. And then if we want to be more evolved and we want to shift our life in major ways, we're going to move from judgment, discernment to judgment, discrimination to discernment. We're going to end with discernment. We're going to refine our awareness in the present moment. For me, I have a set of principles that I look at when I'm discerning something to see if something is true or false. And the more it hits on this category on one side, it tells me that it's closer to truth. And if it hits more on the other side, it's telling me that it's likely an illusion, a fear. There's something about it that's not real or true. So I'm going to leave that on the screen of what I have formulated as my tools of discernment. These are largely based out of yogic philosophy and the philosophy that we are already whole and complete and perfect in our true nature. So we're going to core truths to absolute truths. I believe that these will also fit in to any religious framework as well. So I will leave those here and you can ponder those and see as you go through your life and you're having a situation that occurs in this moment, what's my judgment? In this moment, what am I dividing? What am I pitting this against that? And 3, can I shift it to, what do I feel about this? What's my intuition say about this? How does this fit in with my framework for wholeness and for truth? So those principles that I use are, if we were to divide a piece of paper in half, on one side, we have what is more closely aligned to truth and the absolute and a wholeness. First, we have whole versus separate. Then we have united versus divided. We have love versus fear. Connection versus disconnection. Openness, expansion versus being closed, contracted. Unlimited versus limited. Abundance versus scarcity. Freedom versus control. Being and allowing versus outcome seeking. Appreciation versus victim mentality. Being neutral versus running in narratives and stories in our mind, the monkey mind. Being neutral, kind of like a base level neutral, what you walk around in most days, versus emotional reactivity. So if, let's say, I am looking for a healthcare practitioner, I am looking for somebody who is more holistic, that's not just looking at one part of my body, mind, self. They're going to be looking at how do I balance her whole system? How is this affecting the whole body? When I look out at what's happening on the media and I see all this information coming in, like the news and social causes and things of that sort, I think to myself, is this creating unity or is this creating division? To me, if it's creating division, it is a false narrative that I'm buying into. Does it produce love or fear? That's another we get from our social conditioning, that let's say there's social media and it's fear-based, it's fear-mongering. To me, that is not truth, and I'm not aligning myself with it. When I'm in relationships, how is my interactions with that person creating connection? Or is it creating disconnection? If it's creating disconnection, it may not be aligned with my highest truth, and it's signaling me that I'm out of alignment with my higher truth. Fears might come up and thoughts might come up about things like, I can't do this, or I shouldn't do this. And I'll pit those against, does this belief give me a sense that I am free or liberated or unlimited, or does it make me feel very limited and small? And one of my favorites to reflect on in present moments is this moment, am I being a victim to what is going on in my experience, or am I appreciating what is going on in my experience? When I am appreciating, I am more and more in alignment with my true self, my true nature. When I'm in victim mentality, then I'm further away from that true nature. So these are some of the tools that I use to pit against my experience and to discern what is true and what is not true, and to align my actions with what is true, to align my thoughts with what is true, and to align my feelings more with what is true. Now that's a lot to take in, and a lot of this information I'm going to give you is meant to just go in and to kind of steep and percolate for a little bit. You don't have to form an opinion or a belief about anything that I'm sharing to you at this moment in time. You're going to gather more data, and then you're going to sit with, how does that feel for you? Is there an internal truth here for you to see and to hear? So this video you may have to come back to numerous times in your life, and you have access to this course for as long as you want to have access to this course, so that you have the ability to do that. But that is judgments, discrimination, and discernment, and we will be using them throughout the course.